the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show on MKCTV.
Welcome to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on MKCTV. A little bit about me: dopamine dresser, clothes obsessor, Sunday swimmer, and an undomesticated goddess. And on today's show, I review the Last Showgirl, which is at the cinemas in Milton Keynes, Cineworld and Odeon, the campus murder mystery I have ever seen, the Apprentice Easter disaster, and Working with Waterstones book review of Yinka, Where Is Your Husband, by local author Lizzie Damilola Blackburn. And my guest is Flora Rees, project manager for MK Litfest.
This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show on MKCTV.
And I'm talking cinema, all things cinema. I went to see The Last Showgirl at Cineworld MK, and tells the story of Shelley, an aging dancer who's been dancing at the Razzle Dazzle show in Vegas for 38 years. And the show is closing, and Shelley, who is beautifully played by Pamela Anderson, who has abandoned her daughter in search of, wanting the limelight. Her daughter's a virtual stranger to her, attends her mum's show and absolutely hates it, and basically says to her mum, was it worth missing all those bedtimes, my whole life you've not been there? And her daughter's living with another family, so they don't really have a relationship. She doesn't even call her mum. It's really sad. But Shelley is living for the limelight. She's lived for the limelight, the glamour and the costumes, and she says that's the only time she feels truly alive. So when she's told that the show is closing, she's understandably devastated, because it literally is her whole world, her whole life. So she goes for an audition, and it's kind of a combination. I felt it was really an uncomfortable watch, because it's a combination of a chorus line, I hope I get it, I hope I get it, I really hope I get it, that whole desperate dancer wanting to be picked, and also a bit Sunset Boulevard, because she's aging, she's 57, and that's my age. It's no age at all, but in the dance world, you're over the hill. And so when she does her dance routine in the audition, the director just says, no, next please, and that's what happens. But she does not accept that, and she's like, no, damn it, I want this. What do you want me to do? And he said, you're not right. And she in her head thinks she's dancing, sort of Moulin Rouge style, but she's not very good. She's not done an audition for nearly 40 years. She's not updated her training or her technique. And, he just says, absolutely not. You're not the right look, and you're too old. And that, for a dancer, is devastating. But my son is in was in that sort of industry, and you don't get feedback. And I think that's the hardest thing of all, is that you go to an audition, and he's been to many auditions, he won't mind me saying that, and you'll get to second, third, fourth audition maybe, and and then you never hear anything again. You never get given feedback. And I think that's the hardest thing, is that you don't know whether it's because of the way you look, or they don't like your technique or anything. So I think she found that really hard, and she was like, damn it, I deserve this. I'm a hard worker. I can do anything you want. And, they basically say no. It is a harsh lesson to witness in an industry which chews you up and spits you out if you don't fit the mold. Jamie Lee Curtis plays her gambling barmaid friend, and she steals absolutely every single scene that she is in. She's amazing. And I think the whole film is really rather sad, but what I really, really liked about it is that Pamela Anderson, when she's not, Shelley, her character, is not performing, she's completely makeup free. And Pamela Anderson, in reality, says she doesn't wear makeup anymore. She's kind of made a stand against the beauty industry. She says she feels it's liberating and it's challenging societal beauty standards, and she feels that she doesn't need to play the game anymore. And I think, in a society where looks are absolutely everything, that's a pretty brave decision. To be fair, she looks fabulous, so she's lucky. But Jamie Lee Curtis has espoused any sort of surgery, and she looks every inch her 66 years. But it is so refreshing to see women with wrinkles on screen. You just don't see women of a certain age looking like they're supposed to look. And that I found really, really heartening. And I think next week I might talk about my sort of thoughts on sort of plastic surgery and injectables. And I'd welcome any feedback my listeners have, what your thoughts are about, altering your facial structure or putting things into your body that will change the way you look. So it was very thought provoking. So yeah, it was really, really refreshing. But it was a very It was sad. It was quite a short film. It was only about an hour and 20, so it didn't feel overly long. But the upshot was that it's her fading glamour. It's her dance career is over, and you don't really get a sense of what happens. But she is you reunited with her daughter, and that is amazing to see that. And her daughter accepts that the show wasn't very good, but she's her mum and they want to make a go of it. So I wouldn't say necessarily it's a happy ever after film, but it's thought-provoking, and as I say, it challenges the societal expectations of looks. So yeah, this is The Last Showgirl, as on at Cineworld, Milton Keynes.
This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show, and
I'm going to be talking The Apprentice. Every week, I am blown away by the idiocy, and last week was no exception. They had to create Easter eggs. What could possibly go wrong? As always, the team split into two. One team was led by Dr. Jana, who'd been chosen by Lord Sugar to be PM, and Jana decided he was going to appeal to the kids market as opposed to the luxury market. So they designed an egg which looked like it'd been made by kids, quite frankly. It was so badly made that Lord Sugar said it looked like the coronavirus. It was hilarious. It was absolutely shocking. And he also is weirdly trying to spread this kind of goodwill message that if you were good, this egg called Easter Ed would, like Father Christmas, would come and give you loads of eggs, sort of thing. He'd forgotten about the existence of the Easter Bunny, which was so weird. It's like, nobody knows who Easter Ed is, and the Easter Bunny is actually quite a pivotal part of Easter. So that was so utterly bizarre. And another design flaw was that the colour of the box that they popped the egg in was the same colour as Cadbury's. So that, again, it was wrong on absolutely every level. Team 2 was led by Malika, who chose herself, in her words, because she used to work for Waitrose for 4 years. Well, I worked for Waitrose for a year. That does not make me a food expert, honestly. It was really funny because when she was pitching to the Waitrose people, there was a guy sort of wearing a white coat, and she said, "Oh, so yeah, I used to work at Waitrose, and so you work on the deli counter, don't you, or the fish counter?" And she just kept digging, and he went, "No, I'm the chief taster or something," and it was so awkward. And then she pitched to Tesco, and they offered her exclusivity, and she said no. And then afterwards, she went back when Waitrose had said no to her offerings. She went back to Tesco and went. Basically, it was kind of like a na. Well, we'd sort of like to work with you, but we don't really need you, kind of thing. And it was just so embarrassing. And the egg that they created was a bit more luxe looking, and they went for the sort of quite a contemporary feel, in that it was matcha, which is a very sort of up and coming trend. The problem was with the matcha is the more you added it to the chocolate mixture, the greener it got. So they were going to end up potentially with something that was a green log, because they decided they were going to go all a bit abstract and sort of Dali-esque, and it was all a bit contemporary. But Easter eggs, we all know, are generally round or sort of oval, and so it was very odd. So they didn't put much of this matcha in, and as a result it was pistachio coloured. So the feedback was, well, this is a lovely looking egg, but different, but it doesn't taste the matcha. So that was a bit weird. But anyway, they won, and I don't know how they managed to win, but they did, because the other team was so bad. But what was really shocking in the boardroom was Dr. Jana, who obviously at this point knew he'd lost, but they hadn't been told they'd lost, but he knew that they had lost. He just decided to quit. And honestly, you could have heard an Easter egg drop. It was just like, oh my God. And he just said, I just feel that the process isn't for me. It's just, there's other people who want it more. And, clearly this hadn't been rehearsed, because this was a proper bombshell moment. I mean, I think in the whole of The Apprentice history, I've only seen one person quit in the boardroom before, and it was a case of did he go before he was pushed, kind of thing. But that was quite shocking, actually, because I think he was a good guy and his heart was in the right place, but I think maybe that's not kind of cut out for the apprentice process. But that was quite a shocking. So yes, you could. It was interesting, and I think Lord Sugar was quite disappointed because, and as Karen said, lots of people, hundreds and hundreds of people apply for this process, and obviously, he applied for it, got it, and that kind of stopped someone else from getting a place. So, it seemed a little bit unfair. But anyway, he made an early exit. See what I did there? The drama.
The Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show.
I'm talking theatre now, and all aboard the campus murder mystery train ever. Murder in the Orient Express at Milton Keynes Theatre last week, and it's out on tour now. I was so looking forward to this as I was a huge Agatha Christie fan growing up. Absolutely loved it, read all her books, avid fan. I think probably after Enid Blyton came Agatha Christie. That's how important she was to me as an author growing up, and sort of started my love of reading. So it all started so promisingly, seemingly very suspenseful and promising sort of thrills galore. But to be honest with you, it was more like an episode of Allo Allo. It was with some questionable accents, some very hammy acting and farcical movement, but it was actually really, really good fun. I mean, I don't want to sort of detract from the fact that it was a great show. I really enjoyed it. It just wasn't what I was expecting. Michael Maloney as Hercule Poirot was no David Suchet, but he did a decent job. And it's set on board the luxury Orient Express. There's an odious character, of course, who's murdered in the first 10 minutes, and it's left to us super sleuths to kind of guess who done it, and with more twists and turns than Hercule Poirot twiddling his famous moustache. It was quite hilarious. I'm not sure it's meant to be, but I really, really enjoyed it. I think Miss Christie might be turning in her grave, because I'm sure that probably wasn't the interpretation that she would have had for it. But I absolutely loved it, and sort of all of us press people in the at interval and afterwards just saying we really enjoyed it, but it was really funny, and campus Christmas it really, really was, and I cannot wait for the next one, which is Death on the Nile.
This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show on MKC TV.
Welcome back to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show and to Book Club Working with Waterstones, my book review. This book, Yinka, Where Is Your Husband, by local author Lizzie Damalola Blackburn, is billed as the Black Bridget Jones, and I absolutely adore this debut novel. It was fantastic. The premise is that Yinka wants to find love, and her problem is her mum wants to find it for her too. She also has too many aunties who are kind of trying to interfere, and they're constantly praying for her deliverance from singledom. It is just, it's properly laugh out loud. Plus there is her preference for chicken and chips over traditional Nigerian food, and her small bum as a result of this, because in Nigerian culture, having a big bum is seen as a sign of prosperity and wealth, and attracts you to the opposite sex. So she doesn't like the fact she's got a small bum, which is different to sort of Bridget Jones, because obviously she's always lamenting her weight, but there are definite similarities, because she is on a hunt now to find her chap, because she's 31. She's Nigerian, but obviously living in London, so she's got the kind of cultural things to contend with. But the added complication is that she doesn't believe in sex before marriage. So that in modern society is very, very complicated. And her cousin Rachel gets engaged, and now she has to commence with Operation Find a Date for Rachel's wedding. And of course, nothing goes according to plan. With much hilarity and frustration ensuing. I couldn't put this book down. I absolutely loved it. I think because Yinka is so likable, and I think if you really love a character, you're invested in them. And I've read books before, and the lead characters aren't that likable, I suppose. So you're like, well, I'm not that invested. I don't really care. But she's kind of really lovable, actually. So the desire to read was kind of unstoppable. But what I particularly loved was the constant dichotomy with her culture, knowing that she needs to please her mum and her aunties, probably to the detriment of her own happiness. But this is what African culture dictates, and woe betide anyone going against the matriarch's wishes. And of course, living and working in London with all the pressures of London life and modern culture, which simply, would not understand her saving herself for her wedding night. So much of this book resonated with me, I have to say, because as a young Zimbabwean coming to London in the late 80s, it was an absolute minefield culturally, but particularly when it came to dating British guys. That was an eye-opener. I thought dating Zimbabwean guys was difficult, but this was on another level. But I was also a Christian in my teens and early 20s, and premarital sex was unacceptable. This was 35 years ago, so I can just imagine in today's society how difficult that would be, sort of navigating it. And also, her friends, her English friends aren't going to understand her stance on that. So it's how she's navigating this difficult path between sort of pleasing, her Nigerian relatives, but also wanting to be sort of thoroughly ensconced in British culture. But I learned a lot about Nigerian culture, which I found fascinating. And it was just a fabulous book. I cannot recommend this as a read enough. Honestly, it was just proper laugh out loud. And as I say, it's very, very Bridget Jones. It's got a very Bridget Jones vibe about it. I'm so delighted that next month I'm actually going to be joined by Lizzie herself, and we're going to talk about this book, obviously, and her latest book is The Rewrite, which is also available at Waterstones, Milton Keynes.
This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show on MKCTV.
And I'm delighted to be joined by Flora Rees, who is a publishing consultant specialising in developmental editing and in literary festival management. She works with authors including the Sunday Times bestsellers Victoria Hislop and Alison Weir, and she's currently project manager for the Milton Keynes Literary Festival. She also moderates events and leads workshops in editing, and is a fellow bookworm, obviously. Welcome, Flora.
Thank you very much, Nancy. It's lovely to be here.
It's so lovely to have you, and we've got so much to get through, so I'm very conscious I need to be time efficient and not digress. So firstly, tell me about your background.
Well, I started working in publishing about nearly 30 years ago, actually.
You don't look old enough.
I hear that sometimes. I have to tell authors that you can trust me. I am older than I look. I've been working in publishing. I started out as an editorial assistant in one of the publishing companies who's part of Hachette. And essentially, I always loved books. I loved reading. I think you're the same. Wanted to make that my career and was able to do so, which I think has been a really lovely thing.
It's so, and again, having a fellow bookworm on, I mean, we've got so much to get through. So tell me about your love of books. Were you always a bookish child?
I was, actually, yes. Right from when I was very small, and picked up, with some of the books I loved when I was little were Joan Aitken, Gerald Durrell. I really enjoyed My Fire and Other Animals. I remember reading that endlessly. And then as I got older, I decided that this is what I wanted to do. So I did a degree in English literature. And then from that, the choices, if you want to work with words, are kind of journalism and publishing, or writing. And what I really thought I enjoyed was the publishing. So I worked from through work experience into publishing jobs. And I was lucky to land at Headline, where I was in the fiction department, and started learning on the job. So lots of working with experienced editors to develop kind of your skills in editorials. That's working with authors, it's working on proofs and copy edits, then gradually being given the opportunity to edit yourself. And I discovered that's what I really enjoy and what I'm good at. So I took it from there.
It's so lovely that this love that you for books that you had as a child has become a really successful career. And I remember, I don't know about you, but I felt like quite a lonely child. I felt quite isolated because but not lonely, because I had my books for company, and I lived in this make-believe world. We didn't have a television growing up in Zimbabwe. We didn't have a TV till I was 15, and I just lived in my little book world. And as I said earlier, I grew up on a diet of sort of Enid Blyton and Agatha Christie, and that formed my love of words and literature. And obviously went, I wouldn't say I'm particularly highbrow on my taste, but that just the magic of losing yourself in a book. There is nothing like it. And don't get me wrong, I love the medium of theatre and film and television, but with a book you've got to use your imagination. And isn't that the most exciting thing in the world, just having to lose yourself in a book and you just don't want to put it down? 3 o'clock you're thinking, God, I really need to go to sleep. It's just the best feeling in the world.
I think that's what you say, the magic of losing yourself in a book. And I think that's what people do find. And when you're publishing, that's what you're looking for. It's those books that you can't put down and that just have something really special, a great story, great characters, great plot, whatever it is. And I love reading quite really widely across all sorts of genres and different types of book, because it's about the story, and that's what speaks to you. I guess I was a bookish child. I was also, I really enjoyed theatre. I was lucky to grow up in London, where you could go to the RSC for the student rates on standby when
in the good old days, yes.
All of those. So but I agree with you that books and reading is my favourite, and particularly fiction, which I've always worked in as well.
And you talk about theatre, and I love theatre. I'm a theatre obsessive. But do you find it interesting when a book is sort of created into a show? How does that fit for you? Does that feel like when you read a book, do you think, I can see this on the stage, or I could see this made into a screenplay? Can you visualize that?
Sometimes I think, it's quite tricky. The difficulty, of course, is that you've got to cut out all the interior monologue and all the interior voice that you get in the novel. I think that's what I love about books, is the depth and the richness of the world that they create, where everything is put down. As you say, you've got to make it up at the same time, but a good writer is just creating those pictures in your mind all the way through. And that's something I'm looking for when I'm editing. So as a reader, what am I visualising? What am I seeing? So some books translate brilliantly to theatre, and it's really interesting, and also to film. And it's really interesting to see what gets picked up, what gets moved, how it changes, because sometimes the story isn't going to quite work in the different medium. And I think, because I'm quite laid back about it, that's fine. If it needs to change a little bit, then it's okay.
That's good, because I think, do you, as as an editor, when you're reading a book, do you read in a kind of a relaxed way, not in a sort of with your critical head on? Because sometimes when I go to the theatre and I'm reviewing, sometimes I'm sitting there with my reviewer's head on, and I can't always really enjoy it and invest in it. Whereas if I'm going to see a show that I'm not reviewing, I'm definitely more invested, because I'm not thinking, I need to, I need to say that. So do you find, like, if you're not reviewing a book, you can just kind of lose yourself, and it's not, Yeah.
But what I do find, and it can be a bit frustrating, is that if there is something that's jarring or something that isn't working in the book, I will notice it. I find this watching TV with my husband. Because I've done so much story and so much kind of plot work with authors, I quite often can see what's coming.
That's really interesting.
Sometimes I don't tell him. But
interesting also, like, I don't know about you, but probably more so you, because this is literally your job, is being the grammar police, and things that, if they're not written correctly, or the English, the grammar is not correct, it really, really gets on my nerves. And sometimes it can actually spoil. I think, just chill. This is sometimes how people write. But I do wonder sometimes how books get through the editing process, because I have read some books, and I'm thinking, I've actually come across spelling mistakes, and that properly gives me the ick.
That's really interesting. I would say that most books will have a mistake in them somewhere, because it's just
human error.
100,000, 120,000 words. So it's a really interesting process. I don't do so much of the final kind of actual copy editing, proofreading, although I can, and I do sometimes. So my main work is in structural editing and the developmental stuff, which is really working with the authors from an early draft, or the draft they're most comfortable to show. And then it's working with them to develop whatever it needs. So it could be characters, it could be the plot, it could be sometimes dialogue, or sometimes the kind of overall how the narrative is working, the balance. It's basically looking for balance. Does this book feel balanced? Are the characters doing what they should do when they should be doing it? Does it hit kind of narrative arcs in the right way? And that's something that I find it fascinating. So essentially I'll read the book and I'll be making notes all the way through. And then I'll go through again and make the sort of real specific in the text edits. And it's where something jars and you go to the right, so you'll point out to the author, okay, so something here is just not quite working. This is what I think it is. This is something you could do, but have a look and see what you think. Because my job isn't to say this is right, this is wrong. It's to say this is my response to this as your kind of proxy reader. And this is where I think the character could do with a bit of enriching, or perhaps we haven't really understood the plot, or quite often what's happened is you've got this amazing story but some of it's still in your head and it's not actually on the page yet, and we need to see that.
Oh, it's so interesting. Lots more to chat about, because the festival is imminent. It's at 9th of April it starts,
9th
isn't it?
12th of April, yes, in Central Library in Waterstones.
And we both love LitFest. This is part of your job. And back in the day before COVID, I used to moderate at some of the festivals. And gosh, authors are a fascinating species, aren't they? I remember until I had 5 minutes notice to interview Stephen Burkhoff, and he really didn't want to do any press, and he's notoriously prickly and difficult anyway. And it was really scary. There's a paying audience, and I had to just talk to him, but he's an actor, so just wind him up and let him talk about himself for 70 minutes. So after that, it was okay, because he just wanted to talk about his sort of body of work, which is very impressive, but not an easy one. But on the other hand, I remember when I got the call from Buckingham Literary Festival to be moderator, interview. Well, for those who don't go to literary festivals, moderate means basically be the sort of chief interviewer. And they said, oh, we've got this really big author for you. And I was like, who is it? And they said, Frederick Forsyth. And honestly, my jaw dropped. I mean, I was a massive Frederick Forsyth fan. Dave the Jackal is a classic spy. That's what his background is. And I remember going back to work, and I worked with some very young people. And I remember I was buzzing with this news, and I walked into the office and went, oh my God, I've literally got the best booking ever. Guess who I'm going to be interviewing? And they all looked at me expectantly, and I went, Frederick Forsyth. Just deathly hush. It's like tumbleweed. Who's Frederick Forsyth? And I thought, you bunch of Philistines. Honestly, it was just, I was so disappointed. But honestly, he was so interesting and such a gentleman. And honestly, that was one of the greatest privileges of my life, interviewing someone like him, because to interview someone like Frederick Forsyth, who you've grown up really, and his books have been turned into these magnificent films, and he's got this fabulous backstory of his life is fascinating, but such a gentleman. And I guess you meet such interesting people. Authors are fascinating people, aren't they?
Yes, and it's really interesting about the kind of moderating the interviewing process, because it does give you a chance to really get to know an author through their work, and then you speak to them in real life, and you're kind of creating a conversation that's entertaining for the audience, while kind of getting quite deep into whether it's their latest book or their whole body of work or whatever it is. And that's what LitFest is so great for, is that you have as an audience this chance to see writers in person talking in depth about what they do, how they write, what they write, why they write, and ask them questions as well, and then get your book signed at the end. So it's a real pleasure to be taking part or being involved in literature festivals, which I've done for nearly 10 years now. And MK, what I love about Milton Keynes Lit Fest is it's so varied. We really try hard to have a real variety of different authors coming in that kind of approach different topics, different genres, take audiences who've got different interests and give them all a space on the stage at the festival.
And it is, I mean, I went many years ago before lockdown, and there was so much variety. And I know that I reviewed earlier in the show Yinka, Where Is Your Husband, by local author Lizzie Damalola Blackburn, and what a great book. And she's going to be on my show in a few weeks' time, and I can't wait to read her second book. But you interviewed her last week at Waterstones. Did you have the best time?
It was a really great evening, actually. Yeah, it was lovely to have Lizzie back. So we do a bookshop series with Waterstones between Waterstones and the Lit Fest approximately once a month, and we were absolutely thrilled when we saw her second book was coming out, and we were able to do an event with her in the kind of within a couple of weeks of launch, and it was terrific. So the new book is called The Rewrite, and it's about a woman who is trying to become a writer. Her novel is out there via agents with publishers, and it's not going brilliantly, and her ex-boyfriend in the meantime has been given a place on the big reality TV show. After he comes back, she's invited to do a celebrity memoir, and it turns out he's the subject.
How exciting!
She has to ghostwrite his book. Anyway, so it's a terrific follow-up to Yinka, and Lizzie it was just brilliant to be speaking to her. She's all the interesting stuff about how she wrote the second book, which can often be a struggle, and everything that's happened in the meantime, and all the different characters in the new book, who are very different to Yinka, but it's got that same joyful. She has a real kind of warm, wry, witty way of writing. It's light, but it touches on quite deep subjects, and I love that in a romantic novel.
No, I absolutely love that as well. And as you sort of touched on, there's sort of the second book. It's like second album syndrome, isn't it? And I guess it's like, this debut novel was so fabulous, and you're writing on the success of that, but you can't do that forever. And then, the pressure to deliver the second one, I guess if you've got a book deal, it must be quite difficult.
Yes, it can be, because of course you've had as long as you've wanted to write book one before it's been submitted to publishers, and then you'll sign a 2-book contract and they say, okay, we need the next book next year. That's quite hard. I work on quite a lot of second novels. I'm working with authors who've got it just nearly there, and then just need that little bit of extra kind of editorial support to find the kind of really reach the level the new book needs to be, and that's really fun. It's really interesting.
And the $64 million question, which will carry on into the next link, I think, is like, I'm curious, you've got a big old pile of books, and I'm just desperate to sort of find out what the criteria is. How do you choose the authors? Because you've got a big old stack of books there. That must be a difficult thing to do.
It is difficult. I mean, you can start out by looking what's coming out this year. You know, what's coming out around the time of the festival that's going to be new and exciting, and that we know that the audiences are going to really enjoy here in MK. We have a lot of contact with different publishers, so we get in touch and say who's coming up, or they'll pitch books to us. We're also just reading all year and coming up
what
with
a horrible
books,
job that must be.
with books that or topics that we think are going to be interesting, and authors that we think that people are going to come and want to see, because that's what it's about. We need people in the audiences getting their tickets and coming along to meet the authors, and we try to do a real range: fiction, non-fiction, children's, and different topics, like I said. So this year, we've got a fantastic lineup, so I'm really excited. Do you want to go who they are?
Let's go through a few of the books that Yes, let's go through a few of these juicy-looking books.
Well, I brought a whole pile. I've got non-fiction on this side.
Okay.
What's really interesting is how you divide up fiction and non-fiction. Because often non-fiction gives you the really meaty topics and great conversations for the audiences, but huge amounts of reading is also fiction, so you want to make sure you're representing that, and that's also my kind of favourite. So on our non-fiction, we tend to do a mix of autobiography, topical books, history, and so on. So we've got coming up a lovely range. So first of all, we're starting off in Waterstones, in fact, with Edward Sturton, Confessions. So a very renowned journalist, voice of the Today programme a while ago, and now, in fact, I was listening to him on the radio over the weekend, which was very enjoyable. And he has written a memoir, Confessions, Life Re-Examined. So we'll be hearing all about this in conversation with him on the Wednesday night. In terms of historical, we've got a couple of absolutely fascinating books. Hallie Rubenhold, who was involved, wrote The Five, about Jack the Ripper murders. Her new book is about the Crippen murders, and what she does is she kind of retells the history through the voices that haven't been heard. So this is through the voices of the music hall women who actually brought him to justice. Wow. And this book, this is actually the bound proof. This is the real one.
That's quite a weighty tome, that one, though, isn't it?
It is, but it needs to be. If you've got a really good, solid historical, sort of true crime history, there's a lot to say, and I'm really looking forward to Hallie's event. I think that's going to be absolutely fascinating. We've then got another, we like to represent local authors where we can, and Lubaba Al-Azami, who has written Travellers Travellers in the Golden Realm, is all about the first English people who went out to India in the time when that empire was huge and ours was tiny. And so it's the different side of the history that's often not talked about. But it's fascinating characters. It's religious people who are being religious persecution, getting out of England at the time when Elizabeth was queen, people who are looking to make money, people who are trying to trade, and the reception they got, and the very, very different power dynamics that you wouldn't necessarily have expected. So Libab will be talking about that on the Saturday morning in the library.
That's interesting. And what else have you got there?
We have another fantastic local writer, Sanjana Moda, who is a food writer, and her first cookbook came out. Now she is leaning on the heritage of India, of East African heritage, where her family, her grandparents came from, and her Yorkshire childhood, and she's fused all those flavours into Sanjana feasts, and she's going to be coming to talk about what that journey is, how that came about, and we will also have some tasting plates.
I was going to say, that was my next question. Will there be food? The most important thing, my stomach's rumbling, I'm thinking, food.
There will be food. You can't really do a session like that without a little bit of a taste. We need to taste those flavours as well as hearing all about them, and Sanjana is wonderful, actually. She's going to be brilliant on stage.
That's such an interesting period in time, though, isn't it? The sort of the whole East African migration to the UK, with Idi Amin kicking, sort of expelling them from their homeland, Uganda and say East Africa, and how they've come over and made such a phenomenal success and contributed so much to British industry. Yeah. It's that'll be a really extraordinary story. I'm definitely interested in reading that, even though I'm not a cook. That sounds really
well. You might be tempted to become a cook. The recipes are wonderful.
Trust me, Flora, you have not seen my cooking skills. Absolutely appalling. And you've got a little one there, haven't you?
Yes, we really enjoy bringing poetry into the festival. And this year we always try to do something that's related to the environment, to the situation that the world is in, addressing that. And this year we have two poets who write about the sort of challenges that we're facing with nature. So we have Will Burns and Hannah Copley coming to do poetry in the pavilion. And this year we're being hosted, which is wonderful, by the Parks Trust in the Parks Pavilion down in Campbell Park. We're hoping the weather will be really good and we can be outside.
Well, if it's like it is today, fingers crossed. But what a great surroundings.
So they'll be sharing their poetry, their discussions about how they write, the challenges of writing poetry about nature, where we are, where we're going. And that's actually going to be preceded by, and I'm very excited about this, one of the events we put on for local writers. So every year we run a creative writing competition called Mink, and we're on to Mink 5, which is for Flash, which is up to 500 word stories, poetry and creative non-fiction. And we have young people and grown up, so 14 to 19 and 20 plus categories. We have the opportunity to launch our anthology. So we've published the shortlisted pieces from those different categories, announce the winners, and share the book with the writers and with the world. So we're looking forward to that. So that's happening directly before. And in fact, Hannah and Will very, very kindly judged our poetry part of the competition.
Gosh, there's so much variety. There is. I mean, it's literally something for everybody. And yeah, we'll talk after this about, where I know there's different places where it's going to be held as well. Fabulous.
This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show on MKCTV.
And my God, we are having the most fantastic conversations off air, aren't we? Sometimes they're the most juicy. But just quickly, I was just saying to you that I've been writing a book for about 10 years, and it's I'd called it dramatized autobiography, and you said it's not called that.
It sounds, it could be autofiction.
Yeah. So basically, I'm making stuff up. So interesting childhood, but having to sort of make it a bit more dramatic. But I haven't got very far. But we talked about the fact that you've travelled a lot in Africa, and I think that's fascinating. Did you say you hitchhiked from Tanzania to Cape Town?
We didn't hitchhike all the way, but we spent 7 weeks travelling. I'd worked in a small publishing company in Dar es Salaam for a year. It was an opportunity that came up after I left university, and I'd wanted to go back to Africa. I'd lived there as a child. And so I spent a year volunteering in this little publishing house. And when I finished, I wanted to do some travelling. And the only person who was really free was my mum. So I was about 22, and mum was about my age. And we spent 7 weeks basically backpacking from Dar es Salaam to Cape Town. And it took us through 7 different countries. We met a most fantastic number of people. We went on trains and boats and buses and hitchhiked in the back of pickups. And it was an amazing experience, actually. And something that, still think about today.
That's really precious memories, honestly. And as you say, would have been a unique experience for locals to have seen a mum and daughter travelling together.
I don't think you get that many mothers and daughters backpacking. We're visibly similar, so they could tell that we're a mum and daughter.
Oh, that's wonderful. So going back to fiction.
Yes.
So that's the next big segment, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've got a couple of really exciting authors as well. So we have Callie-Anne Bradley, whose debut novel, Ministry of Time, is coming out in paperback just before the festival. So we're looking forward to having the paperback edition. And this is fantastic literary speculative fiction. The idea is there's a Ministry of Time who are bringing people, they're working out how time travel works. They're bringing people back from very key places, and Commander Gore from an explorer is brought back as one of this group. And he is given a bridge, and the story is told through the bridge's point of view. So the bridge is a person who is an agent who is essentially trying to get him accustomed to modern day Britain. And the story just expands from there. It's just fantastic. And she's going to be interviewed by Ellie Williams, who wrote her latest book is... apologies, it's a wonderful title on the shipping forecast that's just slipped my mind for a second, but she wrote The Lost Dictionary, and her latest book is also in this kind of world of speculative fiction. So I think they're going to have a fantastic conversation together.
That'd be really interesting you say that, because I'm a woman of a certain age, and I think I might retitle this What Was I Saying? This podcast, What Was I Saying? Because sometimes you just think, I know it's on the tip of my tongue and I just can't remember. So lots of fiction as well.
Yes, we have also finishing off on the Saturday night, a sort of crime finale, the wonderful Mark Billingham in conversation with Sarah Pinborough. So this is going to be a lovely conversation. Mark is funny. Sarah's incredible. They're both going to be funny, witty, enjoyable, lots of great conversation about crime fiction, how it happens, what Mark's doing. Sarah, of course, has got lots of adaptations into different TV shows now and has some really great, but her new book's not coming out till later in the year, but we'll definitely be doing something with her in due course.
That's exciting. I think I interviewed Mark Billima at Amptill probably 2015, 16. Yeah, he's just gone from strength to strength, though, hasn't he? Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
What a great combination of the two of them, though.
I think it's going to be a really great evening. So that's Waterstones on the Saturday night. That's our final event of the festival.
So tell me, because I know I think it's 3 different venues, isn't it? Which is, it's lovely because then there's something for everyone, and you're not governed by just being in one place. So tell me how does it look?
So we start off. We tend to be in Waterstones in the evenings and in the library during the day. So the Central Library, just across the road from here, which is the most wonderful venue because obviously people who are going there already are people who love books. So that helps. It's central. It's easy to get to on public transport as well as by car, which I think is really important to try and make the festival accessible to everyone. And so we will be in Waterstones on the Wednesday night with Ed Sturton. We're then down at the Parks Pavilion in Campbell Park for our poetry and our creative writing competition winners. We're then back in the library all day on Friday, so we run writers' workshops as well. I was saying to you earlier that we try to do a lot of support and development for local writers. So we've got workshops on fiction, on finding your voice with Michael Stewart, author, one on what editing is. So if you've got that to that point, you want to work out how to polish your manuscript and what it is that you need to be doing to get it to the point you can submit it to publishers. Aki Schultz will be leading you through that. And then we've got a lovely workshop called Spinning Tales with Myth and Folklore by Zoe Gilbert, who writes in this area, which is about how to write stories from myth and folklore, write modern versions of those, or write your own interpretation of. So those are going to be terrific in the library. And then in the evening, we're back in Waterstones. We're doing a collaboration with the Open University on free speech and literature. So we have 4 online events happening in March about different topics on that, and then we're culminating with a group of writers talking about literally free speech and the politics of literature here in Waterstones, including Henry Porter, who is a journalist and novelist, Aki Schultz, who is chair of PEN, and Sabrina Mahfouz, who is a playwright and a theatre writer. And that should be absolutely fascinating, kind of really getting into the meat of those topics. Then we have Callie-Anne. Then we're back in the library on Saturday, where we'll be having, as well as the events I've spoken about, also our children's festival. And we do love doing stuff for children. So we've got events for 4+, 6+, and 8+. So we have a lovely picture book, so we'll have kind of interactive events with the authors, reading from their books, talking about them and doing stuff with children. That's for 4+. Brand new book, which I've just received, Dadbot. So this is a graphic novel about Josh and Daisy have got Dadbot from the local car boot sale, and he turns out to be a pretty much upgraded parent. They're very excited about Dadbot taking charge for the summer holidays until somebody tries to steal him. So that's going to be terrific. And then we have the wonderful Angelique Ralph, who is a fabulous award-winning children's writer, coming to do an event for our 8+ audience with the letter with the golden stamp. And then we come back to Waterstone. Tell
me why the Literary Festival is so important, particularly to us here in Milton Keynes.
Thank you. Well, we started back in 2017 when the team, it was a group of kind of people interested in writing in books, some professionals, wanted to get together and put on a festival in Milton Keynes, because a literary festival is a really great opportunity to sort of showcase writers and bring together people who are interested in reading and writing in books. And it's really grown since then. Obviously, we had COVID and the festival didn't happen in person for a couple of years, but they pivoted very quickly to online and started doing some of the first online events on Zoom, which went really well. They've had a great selection of writers doing that. And then we decided to bring the festival back in 2023. That's when I got involved as project manager, and put on a festival in that April, which went really well. It was a fantastic event of kind of getting people back. And we held it in the library for the first time, which was a lovely venue, as I've mentioned, because it's the home of books. So it seems the right place to take it. And the library has been incredibly supportive, really brilliant in helping us sort of set up and get the news out to people about the festival, because it's astonishing how many people don't know there's a Lit Fest in Milton Keynes. So please tell your friends. We do want lots of people to come and join us. So then we wanted to carry on putting on festivals, of course, but we had been doing the creative writing competition and thinking there's a lot of local writers here who could also, we can develop more support. As a publisher, I'm really interested in helping writers into publishing. So we ran a first publishing masterclass and networking event with literary agents and writers and publishers. We've done that twice now. It went really well. We've started more writing workshops and an online writing course for writers, and just generally finding ways to get their voices heard. So we'll do every couple of times a year, we do an online gala. So we invite people to send in pieces which are judged in the same way as our creative writing competition, anonymously. And then we pick about 12, and those writers will perform on the evening of the event online. So we're kind of gathering a really lovely, rich number of pieces that have been written by people in the local area, and we regard that, we're based in Milton Keynes, Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire is the kind of region that we go into. And we'll be featuring more writers at the festival. So on the Saturday afternoon at 5 at Waterstones, we're doing an event called Raising Voices, which will be featuring some of the most interesting, exciting pieces that we've had written for festival events over the last 5-7 years. So that's going to be really fun.
It's so exciting to be able to celebrate, as you say, local talent, because I think sometimes we can feel a little bit, sometimes I feel like Milton Keynes doesn't have a community, but if you're in something like this, it is a community. If you have that interest, you will find your people.
Yeah.
And that's, I think the book world is very safe and warm, and everybody seems to know everybody else. It's a bit like the theatre world, and it's wonderful to feel that people can come and just talk about their love of books.
We're really enjoying sort of expanding our volunteers as well. We get a lot of people saying, can I come and volunteer at the festival? The answer is almost always yes, because there's lots to do, from front of house to helping set up, to helping take down, to taking authors in and out of their events and running around with microphones at the Q&As, and it's a great way to get involved, actually. So we do welcome volunteers. Again, you can find out about that on our website, mklitfest.org. But yes, it's an opportunity to meet other people who are interested in books, and we have from right across Milton Keynes, it's a very scattered city in some ways, and so doing something centrally where people can come together, I think, is really important. And I think that's something, we do some fantastic festivals in MK with IF, and with there are other literary festivals. Stony Words is a great event that happens in January, and we're really pleased to be kind of one of these events. We're going to be reaching out more to local writers with a community foundation project that we're doing over this year. So trying to get more stories written about Milton Keynes, and information about that will be going on our website soon. So there's a lot going on. It's exciting, and it's always challenging, but it's really fun. And I think we just want to get people involved, get people reading, get people writing.
And it's knowing where to go, though, isn't it? It's again, it's like if you're in that world, it's like, okay, now I know it's here. And at Waterstones, it's just, I love going in there. It's just, for me, it's my happy place. I could spend all day in a bookshop or library. I just think there's something so cathartic about being surrounded by books. It's just so relaxing. You can't feel stressed when you're in a bookshop, can you? It's just the best place in the world, and I love the fact there's a coffee shop in there. It's just like, just to be able to sit and have a pastry and a hot chocolate and read a book. It's just, I think it's lovely, and I think there should be more outlets like that. I think maybe more coffee shops should be offering books, and you do see that, like book swaps wherever you go. At work, we've got a book, sort of a book exchange thing, and as a child, we had a library, but we also had something called a book exchange, which I loved as an avid reader. I used to go and be able to get books, exchange your books for like a couple of cents, not pence or whatever. I don't know if that's something you had in the UK, but my book exchange was my go-to, probably more than the library. And I loved buying books, and I loved buying books, for, as I say, a couple of pence, and I'd read them, and then I'd take them back and I'd buy another one. And I think that's so exciting. We can instill this love of reading into our kids and keep that going. And I think the Literary Festival is a great way to do it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think hopefully we get, particularly if you've got people bringing their kids to the children's events and then growing up with us, that'd be wonderful. One thing we have got is a YA event as well happening at the festival, which is, this is the uncorrected proof. It's the real book isn't coming out till April. We'll be there around the launch time. Anna February, who used to be local to Milton Keynes, and so she's written a young adult novel, which is a really, they put it as, think The Hunger Games meets A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and it's absolutely that. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's set in a future world where sort of dystopian world where in a colony that has been based on the way a bee colony is set up with the queens at the top and the worker bees. And the key thing happens is that one of the future queens is found murdered, and her bodyguard should not have survived. Oh. And so the bodyguard has got to work out who killed her charge before she herself is taken into custody.
It's so interesting. Like, where do people get these ideas from? And I guess it never ceases to amaze you and fascinate you. And I just think, our imaginations are just wonderful, and to have that talent to be able to get your words down, and then to go through the discipline. And I'm not disciplined enough to have to say I've done very well with my book. And every time I speak to someone to do with books, I'm like, I must write my book, because I do feel like I've got a story to share. But it is discipline, and you do have to really, really want it, and set aside that time. It's like exercise. If you really want to do it, you'll find the time.
I think that's true. I mean, sometimes people say, so I want to be a writer. What do I do? And I said, well, start by just writing every day. Write something. It doesn't have to be 500 words or 1,000 words, but if you get something down on the page, it's better to have something on the page you can edit than nothing on the page that you haven't yet created.
And they always say, write about what you know, write about what you love.
Yeah, write about what you love, or write about what you're interested in. Because if you've got a passion for something, that will show through. And I think you do see that in writing. People who really enjoy writing something that shows on the page.
Yeah. I'd forgotten just how excited I get when I talk about books, actually. So it's so lovely to talk to a fellow bookworm as well. So we're talking about the MK Lit Fest. So much going on, isn't there? There's something for everybody, and that's what I love.
I think you're right. I mean, that's what we try really hard to make happen. And it's so far, it's great. We're getting a great response to the programme. All the tickets are available from mklitfest.org. So you can go online and find them there. You can follow us at mklitfest on pretty much every social media channel, and we always say sign up to our newsletter, which you can find on the website, because that's when you get the first news of everything that's coming up and first chance to get tickets to our events. And
I think what I was saying to you off air, what I find so wonderful is this: people have fallen in love with reading again, and there was a time that bookshops were closing left, right and centre, and it seemed that people weren't reading anymore. And I mean, that broke my heart. I mean, I, as someone who's always been a reader, I read to my children, and that's an integral part of their development. It pains me now that they don't read, but I did my best, and right up until they were pretty much early teens, and they were like, "Mum, get off now. This, we really don't want to do this. Sort of have bedtime stories." It was really important, because that was really a really important part of my childhood as well. And hopefully parents are still doing that, or did you sort of say that's not happening as much now?
It's really interesting. There's been some recent surveys to suggest that fewer children are reading or enjoying reading than used to. But that's one of the reasons we do things like the Children's Festival at Litfest, because you get kids in front of an author and they suddenly understand what is exciting about books and why reading them can take you into different worlds. We've run a schools lit fest. We're trying really hard to reach out and make more of that. I think during COVID people started reading more. That certainly seemed to come through. And independent bookshops are doing quite well now. And the indie publishing scene is absolutely bursting, which is fantastic. We ran an indie book fair for local authors who've published themselves or published with the local presses. We had more than 35 authors there and a great audience coming to buy their books. So there's a lot, it's very buoyant. There's lots of buoyant stuff happening. Obviously, we need to keep encouraging people to keep picking up books. And that's one of the reasons we do Litfests, is because it's a great chance to sort of see your favourite authors in person and ask them questions, meet them, get your book signed, and get inspired to read something that maybe you've not read before. We always say, pick a session that you wouldn't normally come to. Come along. You'll find out something really interesting that you didn't know before, and you'll really enjoy it.
And that's what I'm loving, is I'm going to Waterstones, picking books that I wouldn't normally read as well, because you can get stuck in like I always talk about getting stuck in a fashion rut, but you can get stuck in a book rut as well. And I'm reading books I wouldn't normally read. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. It's been lovely to be here, and I hope to see all your audience coming to the Litfest, mklitfest.org.
Absolutely, and we will absolutely spread the word. So you can mail me at nancy@horizonradio.com or DM me at nancymk on Insta if you'd like to be a guest on my show. If you've got any suggestions or anything that we've talked about today that you'd like us to expand on, but I would say I'm very keen to hear. I'm getting more and more people sort of messaging me saying, I'd love to be a guest on your show. If you've got something to say and we're supporting Milton Keynes and the surrounding areas, I'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you. This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show. Thank you so much for listening.